Welcome to Board Games Anonymous, the podcast about board gamers and the insane fun we have at the table together. This is Chris.
And this is Anthony.
And this is episode 479, No More Expansions. We like to thank all our Patreons for helping us bring you a brand new episode, but without expansions. Alright folks, we're back and we're talking about things that we never thought we would talk about. Games that we did not want expansions for.
I don't believe you. I think you're lying. This is not the Chris I know. Like some kind of alien body snatch situation going on here. Who are you? What are we doing?
I don't know. I mean, if there's anything that I love most about tabletop gaming is the expansions. I love all the extra characters, the extra special abilities, the different perspectives and new things that they bring into the game. I'm just always excited to see something new coming out for a core game that I love. And even sometimes I'll buy the expansions even prior to playing the core game. Or even sometimes I'll be like, let's never play the core game. Let's always play with the expansions.
Right. Yeah. I have so many games that I have expansions for that I've never played. And then I don't even know I have the expansions.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I like looking through the list. I remember last week when we did the list of games that need expansions, I was putting games on the list that have expansions that I own. And I just didn't realize that they had come out. I'm like, this is not healthy, what I'm doing here.
Even back in the day, I guess even still to this day, so many companies do such a great job with their expansion boxes and their production and everything like that. I never wanted to get rid of the boxes.
Right.
It always felt like sacrilege to be like, I have to toss this away. I'm like, but I love the artwork. I love that the expansion, like I have the expansion. Like maybe it's a collectible thing at that point, but it felt good. And now that I'm running out of space because every publisher feels the need to, overinflate their box despite the components that are in it, I've had to condense. And again, that was something that like broke me. It was just like there was a time where I had just expansion boxes in a corner that was stacked up, and I'm like, I will find something to do with this at some point. I'm like, maybe I'll hang them on the wall. Maybe I'll make a collage out of them. Maybe I'll use them for other things. Then at some point I was just like, all right, it's over. It's over. Like, I have to break away from this. I have to break these boxes down. I have to find ways to kind of condense with the base game. And it can be heartbreaking.
Yeah. You know what drives me the most nuts, though, is I've always condensed because I've always had limited space. And certain games release so many expansions that eventually you can't condense, right? They won't fit in the base box anymore. And you're like, okay, I have to keep the expansion box. Yes. Well, now I only have one expansion box, but there's been 3 expansions. Yes. And that's not okay. No. So that drives me nuts too. Like, well, there's several games on the list we're going to talk about today that have done exactly this thing of here's an expansion. Cool. It goes in the base box. Here's another expansion. Okay, I think I can fit it in the base box. That's probably everything, right? Here's another expansion. I'm like, no, I'm out of room. And here's another one. Like, no, stop it.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Really, that's enough now. You can stop. Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. Actually, in fact, I've been going through this a little bit. I've been going through my collection and being able to pull out some boxes that have a stack of dust on them. And I came across my Scythe big box. I don't know if you ever picked this up.
I did. Yeah, I have it. Yeah. I don't know why, because I haven't played it since I got it, but I do have it.
Which is weird because at some point this became the thing, right? You and I wished on the monkey paw and we said, why can't everything fit into one box?
Oh, don't get me started on the stupid big boxes. Ugh.
They started on these big boxes, and at first we were like, oh, this is a great idea. And then we saw the price. And I'm like, well, exactly what am I buying? They're like, oh, for $40, $50, $60, you will get a box. And they must have laughed that they were able to charge so much for what is literally an empty box.
Yeah.
And I remember when Scythe came out, I mean, even when the initial Kickstarter came out, I bought the Art Connoisseur edition because I'm fancy. And it's numbered and it's shiny and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is a beautiful box. I'm going to I kept it literally in a I guess it was like a pillow bag, like a fancy pillow bag, so zipped up. So I was like, this is brilliant. This will protect the box because I like to protect the boxes. And then at some point, expansion, Fenris expansion, module tiles, so forth and so on promos. And then I was just like, all right, this is still good because all the boxes are very unique and they're pretty and they fit nice. Everything's nice. And then I just pulled this out. I'm like, dear God, how long have I had this giant empty box of air taking up space? And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I wanted to get rid of the box. I wanted to sell the big box, but I felt bad because it's just a box. There's only three small boxes inside of it, and there's nothing inside of those boxes. So there's nothing special about the big box. I think the thing they were trying to kind of say, Jamie Stegmaier was like, oh, you can put the cover from your original box on this box, but then it ruins the full art aesthetic of the box.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's meaningless. And again, I don't want to get rid of the Scythe box because it's a very nice box. And at the moment, I'm holding on to it, but eventually it's going to meet its demise. So I went to Board Game Geek and I'm looking at Board Game Geek and I'm like, all right, so I've opened this giant box I spent like $40 or $50 for, and I regret it immediately because there's nothing inside. There's no organizer.
No.
And then when you go to the website, they're like, oh, it fits any organizer. And I'm like, any organizer that is not already in here? Like, I don't like that. I don't like that I also need the organizer. I want something in the box, even if it's a cardboard organizer.
Right.
Nonetheless, they give you 3 empty long boxes. And then I'm like, all right, so clearly Stonemaier Games has some way to put everything in the one box. And then as I'm looking at the information, the feedback, there is no plan for
Nope.
what goes in the box.
Yep.
I don't know if you knew that.
I know now because mine is just a big pile of stuff,
Yeah.
and has been for what 4 or 5 years. It's what a terrible product. Just a terrible product.
I, I would have liked them at least to do the math and just be like, look, they must have done some math because they obviously figured out what size of box they would need to fit the stuff that goes in the box. Now
Right.
maybe they, at the time they didn't know how much promo stuff and how much expansions they were going to make. But now it's up to me because no one had anything posted other than like a couple of like pretty tiny images of like how they shoved everything in the box. So long story short, I fit everything into the box. Don't ask me how I did it. It was very hard and difficult, and I just fit everything. Although I for some reason I can't find the Wind's Gambit expansion. I thought I bought it at some point. I can't find it. So
Oh.
I might have to either dig through my stuff again, there's more boxes I can't reach, or buy it and then see if I could squeeze that in. So I did
Hey,
it.
that's not gonna fit, man. Those airships are huge.
Airships are huge. Yeah, so I was going to say they're and they're weird shaped.
Yeah.
They're not like a nice square. So they're just really long and like look at a giant hot dog. They're not a good size to fit into a nice square box. So I've done it. I'm proud that I've done it, but also now everything's in a box and it's like willy nilly. So
Yeah.
I had to like somewhat separate some stuff and also throw everything into a thing. And I'm a little more, I think I'm a little more like obsessively organized than you are, Anthony. Like you can do bags and throw stuff in there. I can't
Yeah.
do that. I need to
Oh.
have like things properly mentally placed.
Yeah. I don't have energy for that. So I'm sorry. That sucks. I do. The one big box I've gotten that I can't appreciate, even if it's still too big for me to carry out of the house, is the Anachrony big box, the Infinity box.
Oh, jeez, I have that out too.
So they ran that Kickstarter, and you could buy the box with the expansion in it, and so it came with the expansion in the box.
Very
And
nice,
I'm
very nice.
pretty sure I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm pretty sure that box with the expansion was still cheaper than the Scythe big box empty.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. But it also came with like organizers and stuff. So and like a chart for how to organize it. So when I set it all up, everything fit into that infinity box. It has a place. It's all organized. It has game trays or whatever version of that. Um, it was just very well done. It's
Yeah.
still too big. It's still too big, but it's not that much bigger than the old Anachrony box, so I'll give it a pass. But every other one of these companies, bad. Stop it. The big box stuff is killing me.
Yeah, I was just talking to our friend Carmen, and he was lamenting his giant collector's Kickstarter version of Suburbia.
Yeah,
And it's
same.
still, I think he might have mentioned it, it's actually might even still be in its original box, like its shipping box, because you just can't get that thing out. You can't bring it anywhere.
No, it's a big cube. It is.
Yes.
It's not quite the size of a full Cadillac cube, but it's close. And
Mm,
it's just awkward. It's big, especially if you got all the player mats.
yes.
And like getting everything back into the box on top of that, like with the like three-dimensional tower stuff, it's too much. Pain in the ass.
Is that the most, I'm trying to find the right word here. I'll leave that to you because you're the wordsmith here. Like the number of expansions that are just colors,
Yeah,
and a lot of the colors are the same colors but just slight shades of each other. What did we do to be deserved with that kind of benefit and punishment at the same time? We did something wrong.
you said it at the beginning. Monkey Paw. This
Monkey
is all
paw.
Monkey Paw. We asked for this. We asked for all of this. Um, because this campaign ran back in what 2018,
Oh,
2017. It was a
jeez.
long time ago, and back then we were like, oh my gosh, a giant version with everything already in the box plus a new expansion. Oh my gosh. And now, fast forward 5 years, I have still never played my copy of Suburbia Collector's Edition.
No, but tell people about the different color cities because I think that's, if you
Oh,
remember,
yeah. No,
that's the kicker.
yeah. So they had all these different color cities that you could choose from. And if you backed it at just like a basic level, you could choose from them, like which ones you wanted, or you could back at the Super Collector's Edition delivery level, which of course I did.
Of
Are you
course you did.
crazy? Why
Don't
would
be
I not
ridiculous.
do that? It was an extra $50.
Wow.
I spent an extra $50 for 20 player color city sets. Why did I do that?
You did that because they all had separate individual powers and they were also asymmetric, right?
Nope.
You did that because they were just one color each, right? And not shades of the same color in some cases.
Oh, you're off base again, my friend. Nope. I did it because the specific cities that they represented had a couple in there that I wanted, even though I could have picked them. So I don't know. There are 20, and the colors, by the way, are red, yellow,
Uh-huh.
black, purple, duh,
That makes
blue.
sense. I'm good. Stop. Stop. I'm
No,
good.
okay, but that's only four. Blue, green, orange, white. We're still good,
We're
by the
still
way.
good. All right. I can roll with that.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Burgundy.
Oh.
I think that's a shade of red. Mint. That's definitely a
Mint.
shade of green. Lavender, just light purple. Lime, which is somewhere in between green and mint. Uh, Brown, pink, teal, yet another color of green, gray, salmon, slate, beige, and olive. There are
Wow.
5 shades of green and or light blue.
That's just fantastic.
Um, this is a colorblind person's nightmare, I'm
Oh yeah.
sure. Uh, I mean, I guess if you let them pick what colors are being played, it's probably fine. But if everybody picks their
Jeez.
own, it's a nightmare. And the reason it was so expensive is because you get the player pieces as well as the player mats in those
Hmm.
colors. There are so many pieces in this stupid box. It is a tremendous waste of resources and money and my mental health. It was, why did I do this?
It's monkey paw, man. It's
Monkey
just,
paw.
you flew too close to the sun, and this is what happens.
Yeah, I did. But I have a New York City player mat, and that's worth something, right?
Sure.
Tokyo. I have a Philadelphia mat, which is I think the lime color.
Yeah.
Because when I think of Philadelphia, I think of lime.
Again, I don't. I know that it. I know they would never play test it. I know it'd be somewhat broke, but why didn't they just throw a little asymmetric kind of player power on it?
Yeah,
On some of them, like again, like
something.
the odd colors.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
because it's just the name of the city and a slight different variation. And like you said, the reason why you want different colors is so that you can easily differentiate them at the table with like a glance. Like even if you're not colorblind and you see like violet and indigo at the table, you're like, wait, was I there? Or was I there? Did I score this? Did I not score this? So this should have been the solution, but somehow they went too far.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, at this again, I've never played this game in this version because it's like just almost unmanageably big.
Hmm.
But if I were to bring this to the table, I would have to be like, okay, only one person can pick a shade of green.
Yeah, makes
Any
sense.
shade of green. Someone's gonna be Philadelphia because that's where we live. That's fine. You can't be any of the other four shades of green. Nobody else.
That's right. That makes sense. Yeah. Oh, jeez. I also will report. I mentioned this a couple episodes back that I was going through. Speaking of expansions, Defenders of the Realm. I, w- with the exception to the miniatures being painted by Eagle Griffin Games, which I never did purchase. Again, I f- I go back and forth on that. I recently did find my two additional newer expansions, and I was like, oh, again, based on the pictures, I thought they were going to be huge. They're not. They're actually like basically one expansion is a very large deck of cards. This is the Heroes Calling expansion, and basically what it allows you to do is hero creation. So it's a pretty large deck, and you select three cards, and there's three different levels, and so you have to line up a one and a two and a three, and now you're basically there's like as I mentioned previously, there's a large collection of different heroes from the base set. And again, that was excellent because it really reflected what it's like to play D&D and the different character classes. This kind of allows you to mix and match, again, based on how you decide you want to distribute these. So it's good because sometimes you just want to do that. You just want to make up a character based on three different special abilities. It can be a little obtuse just because like it is.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm happy to have it. And then the other one was a really interesting idea for an expansion. This is Companions and Catacombs.
Hmm.
And this was, you remember Rune Wars, Anthony? Where the
Yeah, yeah.
hero would just have its own turn and go off and do a thing?
I love that. It's my favorite mechanic, and no games do it, and it's terrible. They should all do it.
Well, this game kind of does it now
Ah,
because
great.
what it allows you to do is just like the whole world is burning down and now you can just go down to the dungeon and do a whole bunch of things, including fighting monsters, going through like you go through a deck of cards, and like you get deeper and deeper into the dungeon, you face different things, and you there's penalties and benefits. So that's pretty cool because I love that, like you mentioned, I love that little odd parts of the game.
Hmm.
And then they have companions. So very similar to another expansion that's in Defenders of the Realm. This actually gives you a deck of cards where you can meet companions, and then these companions very similar. Like they have a special ability, but they have artwork that goes with the special abilities. The original expansion just had like here's a special ability, but now you have a companion with you, and they help you, but they can also leave you and stuff like that. So it adds another dimension. Like I like that idea. Like now you actually have another D&D character with you, an NPC that's playing along. And then there's relics, which allow special different things to happen as far as like treasure vaults and stuff for enemy generals and things like that. So two very good expansions, which I'm happy to mention because we're gonna rip some expansions in like a minute here.
Yeah, let's do it.
But these are very good expansions. So the big box is kind of a thing. I'll let you know if I can fit the airships. If I can find them, I might have to pick it up just to kind of. But it's a big box. Stop. We should do an episode just on big boxes. Stop doing the big boxes.
Oh my gosh, we could do a top 10 stupid big boxes. I own a lot of them. I
There's
just
our.
I was playing Mage Knight for 2 weeks. I tried to figure it back on the shelf. I'm like, that's right, it doesn't fit anywhere because it's a big stupid box.
All right. All right. Episode 483, because you're going away for a couple weeks. You talk about that while I type this in.
All right, yeah. So, so we're getting the plans in place, folks. You're hearing it live. But I'm going to be out, as Chris mentioned. I'm going to be out for 3 weeks on vacation, visiting the family back in Seattle, taking the kids on a plane for the first time. It's going to be
Ooh.
crazy. I hope it's not crazy. I actually hope it's really boring on the plane. But yeah, I will be out for 3 weeks, and then the week after that, we're going to be in Morristown for Dex Light. So we got a little bit of different programming coming for you in the next month or so, where we have some special guest hosts, and obviously we'll have our convention show around the 4th of July. So yeah, wish me luck and safe travels, and I'll still be posting the episodes and putting everything up on social media, so you can still ping me, but I won't be on the actual episodes.
Well, while you're at it, tell us a little bit about the upcoming convention
Yeah,
or
so
conference. Conference convention. Right?
conference. Yeah, we should say conference because that's what it is.
But also an expansion to the conference is the convention.
Oh, yes, I love it, and not too much. It's perfect amount.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so we are having our annual Board Game Academics conference on July 4th in Morristown, New Jersey. So we are doing this as kind of a collaboration with Dexlight, the board game convention taking place there from the 5th to the what is that, the 7th. Um, and so we're going to be there on the 4th. That's Thursday, obviously July 4th. And you can come and you can participate and listen to. We have nearly a dozen different people presenting their research as part of that event, and we're going to have a keynote speaker as well as a panel, kind of wrapping things up. So we have several people presenting in person, lots of very interesting topics, everything from like using RPGs in philosophy classrooms to like kind of breaking down the approaches of Dungeons and Dragons and other RPGs to specific types of elements of our modern culture. Some discussions around the way board games are utilized in different functions and different ways. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We did it last year at Gen Con. This year we're doing it a little more locally, but we will be recording it as well. So if you're interested in attending, obviously join us in Morristown. It will be awesome. You can find more information on that on the Dexlight website, which will be in the show notes for this. Um, you can also find the link to that on boardgameacademics.com. Just click on the little attend button at the top. Uh, if you cannot make it, if you're not local, or if you have July 4th plans, or if you just can't make it that far out, then we will also have an option where you can register through the website as we did last year, and you'll have access to the Discord channel as well as any of the recordings that we make. So we have several people presenting virtually. You'll have access to those Zoom links. You'll be able to watch those live as they happen. Though you also get the recordings that go out after the fact. So you can register and join us there. So I guess the takeaway here is check out boardgameacademics.com for all the information. It has the full agenda up when you're listening to this. It also has links to Dexlight to register and to our Eventbrite page to register for the digital access.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of great events. Come down, hear all these wonderful speakers, hear the keynote, the panel presentation, and then stay for the board game convention. We'll be there along with Will and several other our friends and guest hosts who you heard in the past. Dave will be here. Chris and Aaron will be there. So a lot of Jen will be there. It's like a lot of people will be there. So it'll be a good time to meet us, play games, and hang out with some cool people. All right, everyone. So, Anthony, that's what's going on with us, which is a lot at the moment.
Yeah.
What's going on with our friends out there? What's our question of the week?
All right. Question of the week this week: what is the most complex game you know how to play without looking at the rules?
What?
Yeah. So not the most complex game you know,
No.
but one that you could teach to other people without having to even reference the rule book.
Ooh, that's a
Yeah.
tough one.
That is a tough one. I had to think about this for myself for a bit too, because I'm like, I don't know that there are many. Um, and part of that too is like the sheer volume of games that we look at and play. I'm like, the rules don't stick around in my brain very long. But let's look at the answers from our listeners first. Over on the Patreon, we had a bunch of good answers. Game Master Dave says Twilight Inscription and Hadrian's Wall currently.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, I haven't played Hadrian's Wall, but Twilight Inscription has a lot going on, so that's impressive. Jill says probably Kanban.
Ooh,
Lacerda
okay.
game that looks overwhelming, but if you remember, ultimately it is worker placement with one worker. It's not too bad. Um,
True.
I think that game in particular really benefits from the graphic design and just general design because
Nice.
everything is laid out in a way where you can see the relationship between all the different actions. Uh, it's like the theme really helps that game make more sense.
True.
David mentions Arc Nova. Simplify the rules to the 5 action cards, and I can remember it better. Yeah, Arc Nova definitely like you have the 5 action cards, and then all the nuance kind of comes off of that. It's if you can remember that basics and just like all the little bits that go around it comes together nicely. Um, Ryan says another Lacerda game on Mars. So
Mm,
there are a
that's
lot of
impressive.
rules. Yeah, that is impressive because that's a game that I've played 4 times and I've had to look up the rules every time. So um, there is certainly a lot of rules, but most of it makes thematic sense and helped me retain them. I found his more recent games a bit more difficult to grok since they were a bit more fantastical in nature. Um, I've definitely heard that for inventions as well, or innovations as well as Weather Machine. It's just
Mm,
those games are so much harder to learn, not necessarily more complex, but they're just not quite as thematic as his older stuff.
sure.
And then Drew mentions Gaia Project. So the player mat drives the income and upgrade progression, but understanding timing, technology, and federations can discourage many first-time players. Thank you to the Terra Mystica games for being a great gateway. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, so lots of big, heavy stuff here. Over on the Facebook page, do have a few more answers. So let's see what we got here. Uh, David says Mage Knight. Um, just kidding. I have to relearn it every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, me too. Same. Again, I talked about it on the podcast. I was playing it a few weeks ago, and I had to relearn it basically from scratch. I'm like, how? I've played this game like several, maybe dozen times, and every single time I have to look up the rules. Um, David says it would be one of the coin games from GMT, Cuba Libre, or Fire in the Lake. Um, Carlos mentions Brass Birmingham
Oh
and
wow.
maybe
Yeah.
some Lisboa games or to Lacerda games.
Mm.
Uh, Uriel mentions Through the Ages. The game is so streamlined, everything makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's the 140 plus online games. Yeah, that might be it. Play the game enough. Um, Ryan mentions Terraforming Mars. Chris mentions Spirit Island. So some good heavy stuff there. I I think for me, it's honestly it's not going to be anything that particularly heavy, unless maybe you count Twilight Imperium.
Mm.
I
Oh,
think
you
I could
do.
play. I think I could play that without looking at the rules. It's not actually that complex of a game, because everything is like laid out. Like here's this act, here are the 8 action options, and here's what you do. And
Yeah.
I guess really the tough one on that is just remembering like combat rules.
Sure. I think, and we talked about this in the past. I think there's some games where the board kind of gives you like hints as far as
Right.
what kind of play. So Blood Rage, Dinosaur Island is kind of pretty simple and straightforward as
Right.
far as it. I can I would take a run at Lisboa. I think I'm looking through the rule book in my head, and
Hmm.
I think I could pull that off. Rococo, I think I could pull that off. Although the new one with all the expansions, probably not. I think
Right.
that's where we get a little too far and a little too deep as far as that's concerned. Uh,
It's
yeah, I mean,
tough. Yeah. Like I think I could do any Rosenberg game, and
okay. Oh
and
yeah,
I know those aren't like heavy, but they all have the same like design language.
sure.
So even if I didn't quite remember the game, I could just probably look at it and be like, yeah, probably we're doing this.
Yeah,
Like,
Agricola, Caverna, I could pull off without a problem.
yeah.
So, I mean, also Marco Polo. It's not very
Yeah,
heavy, but I
that's
think
a good one.
it's a pretty straightforward kind of game where you just lay everything out and you're like, oh, okay, roll dice.
Right.
The dice go in the spots after you roll them,
Right.
and you do a thing. So you're
Yeah.
good, right? Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
Marco Polo for sure. I could definitely play that blindfolded at this point. Um I wish I could say War of the Ring, but that is one that I play
Oh,
just infrequently enough that I always have to reference it a little.
sure.
But it's all in there. Like once I reference it, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, this, and this.
Yeah, I think on the other on that side too, we just talked about Suburbia. It's
Yeah.
been a while since I played that, but that was a game I could always just open up and throw down and play pretty quickly.
Yeah,
So,
I think I could probably just put that out and play it right now. Yeah.
right?
It's a
Yeah.
pretty intuitive game.
I think again, I think when the expansions come in, that's where things get a little
Yeah,
wobbly, or some
sure.
games have player count issues. So like you have to remove certain boards, or certain effects don't happen, or certain areas get closed off. So unless it's actually printed on the board,
Hmm.
it can be a little challenging as far as all that's concerned. So yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that because we're coming over. So we want to play some games.
Yeah, you got to teach them.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that's it's necessary because you do have those situations where people come over or people contact you and they're like, "We're gonna game." and you have to grab something that you can play that you feel confident in that will get table time. So other than having relearned games 50, 20,000 times. So until it's the
Right.
Matrix, until you can Matrix it. All right, so that's everything that's happened with our friends out there. Anthony, let's get on to the episode. And let's talk about what games we want to get to the table. Let's talk about our acquisition disorders.
All right. You sent me this one, and I rolled my eyes heavily.
I know. I can even see that through the text message. I was like, what
You
the
could
heck?
feel it. Your phone almost rolled out of your hand.
I was like, whoa.
Jeez, man, keep your eyes in their sockets.
Use an emoji or something, damn it.
Yeah, Nucleum's getting another expansion, and you might say, "Oh, I know about that. I just got it in." No, 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 friend. There's another expansion
Uh-huh.
coming this fall.
Uh-huh.
Nucleum Court of Progress.
Ah.
So the first expansion, Nucleum Australia, was literally just that. It was a new map for Australia. It had a couple small little rule tweaks. Otherwise, it was just a new map. I talked about it like 3, 4 weeks ago. It was fine. I guess buy it if you played Nucleum a bunch and want more content. If you haven't, there's no reason to buy it. It's just a slightly different way to play the same game. Uh, Nucleum Court of Progress looks to be like a more traditional, fully formed expansion in the sense that there are new mechanics, there's new elements. It's not just a new map. They have not released very much expansion information just yet, so they're saying there will be players will be diving into the world of political intrigue, fighting for influence among the political parties. They will need their help to gain some benefits through the game and score even more victory points. So it is the classic. Let's take an economic engine game and throw some politics in there
That always works out well.
and see what happens. And you know what? I honestly cannot think of a game in which this works. And I'm not saying it there aren't any. I'm sure there are, but like the handful that I can think of, like Terraforming Mars or like it's just like I don't like it. I don't like you take this economic system, you take like the kind of balanced, engine building element and you tack on this thing to the side where you're dealing with this other system and politics and trying to build influence. It's a new resource and it gets you new stuff. I just don't like it. Um, and I don't know that that's what this is because they haven't really said as much. Like they haven't announced what it actually is. Um, Now there is a picture that went up on Board Game Geek earlier today because somebody posted in the thread like, "I want to see more about this expansion," and somebody posted a photo that looks like it's from like Tabletop Simulator or something. It doesn't really show much, right? It shows there's a new board, sideboard, it looks like, with like these different like areas that you can place things, are color coded and probably related to the political elements. There are some new tiles in there. There's a bunch of new action tiles. It looks like there's new technology tile options as well, to kind of mix it up a little bit. Because right now you have the four. If you play with 4 players, all four come out every game. So having six would be great. Then you have some variability to it. Um, but other than that, we don't really know what this is going to be. So my guess is sideboard, new resource, a place to put stuff, new action. Those resources come in and let you do more things on the main map. It doesn't mean it won't be good, but from what I've seen other games doing that, I honestly don't want more mechanics in this game. Like we've talked about this, it has about the perfect balance of mechanics. If you're gonna do an expansion for it, I want you to think of new creative ways to use the existing mechanics. Um, like I know I gave like a middling review to Australia, but give me more maps that do creative things, and I will then find a map that I like, similar to Power Grid or Concordia, where I'm like, I like this map, I don't like this one, I like this one, I don't like this one. This is just I don't know. I feel like I'm premature here poo-pooing this, but I'm not excited about it.
It's a shame because cons- it it's more of what you like, but then again, the game already, even in the core set, I haven't played the Australia map version yet, had, I would say, almost a bit too much. The uh, opportunity to access all of those kind of special abilities and powers and things like that, and then everyone having unique power sets and things like that. Not to mention all the things that you could purchase to kind of create your own kind of action tree. It was just like I think we joked about this, where it's like someone was like, oh, and I don't have to pay for my rails or whatever. We're like, sure, why not? Like, I don't have to pay for this. I don't like, okay, sure. Like at some point, it just became like a wash, right? It just
Right.
became too much of a thing. So I agree. I don't think there needs to be more. I would again, not having played Australia because I can't speak to it, but I would like there to be more boards where it just focused things a little bit tighter. And I think if it's going to be that kind of game like Concordia or Age of Steam, I think we need maps so that all of us can get on board and get through all of the I know what you did, I know what how you have
Right.
all these powers and things and like flush all those things out and then go to the gimmicks and the stuff. And I don't mean
Yeah.
gimmicks in a bad way, but something.
No, no, but like Concordia, like you said, how many maps did we get before we got Salsa? Like
Yes.
4 or 5?
Yeah.
Like Power Grid, I don't even know if we ever got like a full expansion for Power Grid. It's just maps and maps, maps, and then like some more advanced maps.
Yes. And then later on you can do something separate like this where it could be like Ticket to Ride Pennsylvania, I think it is,
Yeah,
where the markets and stuff like that. Then you could bring something like that in. But I think you need to I think this game needs to marinate a little bit before adding additional spice to the pot because it's already pretty spicy. Just saying.
right.
But I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
I mean, again, like I know I'm like super negative out of the gate here, and part of that is just I've played other expansions like this and not liked them, and the other part is I'm kind of happy with the game the way it is. So
Sure.
to each their own. Go get the expansion if you want it. I will almost certainly get it because that's who I am. But will I be happy with it? Come back the next time we do this episode. We'll find out.
Well, if you play it and you review it, I'm sure people will hear about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And again, it just like with Terraforming Mars, like it could be the expansion that just kills it. Because that's a thing that happens too. Because people play an expansion, they're just like, and I feel like it's done. Like I feel
Yeah,
like they went too far, or they jumped the shark, so to speak.
that is true. That is the last like legit expansion for Terraforming Mars. It was a bad one, Turmoil, and
Yeah, and then they had to come out with Prelude 2. Like they
ugh.
went back to the one thing that worked.
Yeah, yeah. What's the best expansion? Just do it again.
Just do it again. Like all the other ones were bad. It just got progressively worse, and then we just like the good one again. So
Yep.
I'm just like, yeah, why not? You're
Yeah. Do it
fine.
again. Do it again.
Just and again, which is also yeah. And now I can never play the base game now because if you don't play Prelude, you're like, this is missing something. You're like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it's Prelude and Prelude 2, The Revenge.
Right. Gosh, I just remember going to a game day with you, I think in Menlo Park, and we weren't allowed, whoever was playing teaching
Oh
the game,
yeah,
we weren't
yeah.
allowed Prelude and we weren't allowed drafting. And I was like, why are we even playing the game?
I
What is the
don't,
point of this?
I don't know. Like that hurts my head to even remember that memory. That was
Yeah,
bad.
it was bad. It was
That was
bad.
bad. Like that was legitimately an expansion that fixed the game. So, and there's not a lot of those out there that does that. So yeah, as I keep playing the solo version on Board Game Arena and going, why am I doing this? Like, let's see what my opening corporations are. Ugh. Let's see my opening hand is of 10 cards I could choose from. Like I'm never going to be able to terraform the planet. You know, and like, oh, I get the prelude stuff. Like better, but still not good. So yeah,
Right.
it's rough. All right, so I have two upcoming games that I want to talk about because they're awesome, or at least seem to be awesome because I've not played them yet. And if I could play them, I will let you know. First is a recent announcement, so recent, I don't think there's photos up. There is an undisclosed site that has some images of just some of the pieces. This is King of Tokyo. Yes, I know you know that. Duel, because Seven Wonders did it, so everyone has to do it now.
Yeah.
Because Duel has become a thing, and now Seven Wonders is doing it. So Richard Garfield was like, "Hey, I'm sure this is what happened. I just played Seven Wonders Duel. We should do that for Tokyo." And
Yeah.
everyone was like, "Yeah, really? Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, this is the perfect one to do that with because A, it is literally two monsters punching each other.
it's true."
And B, the two-player playing two players in King of Tokyo is kind of bad. So
Yeah.
perfect. This is perfect.
So what I've been able to pull from the internet is a couple things. First up, it's not the traditional King of Tokyo. Again, as Anthony mentioned, like you can play King of Tokyo two players. it does not work well. And just like Seven Wonders playing 2 players, you can do that, does not play well. So a similarity here is instead of the traditional in and out of Tokyo, you're both in Tokyo and you're not leaving Tokyo, and you have 3 different win conditions. So just like Seven Wonders Duel, where there is a, how would you say it, a push pull, there's a tug of war contest on military, and there's also a set collection as far as science is concerned. Here, you're going to have 2 different areas. One is your general fame kind of points, and then one is going to be your destruction points. If you remember King of New York, where they had a little building broke, so you're going to do the same thing. It's Yahtzee. You're going to roll your dice, and you're going to get what you get. And if you get 3 of a kind of either the destruction or the fame, markers, you're going to be able to pull that token over to your side. If you're able to get either one or the other of those tracks all the way over to the end, you win. If you're able to get both of those tracks halfway to your side, you win. And then there's also just you slap the heck out of the other person until they die. So there is still that King of the Hill kind of mechanic where you can take out the other monster based upon, the punches that you do throughout the game. So there's the kind of core concept. There are still special ability cards. These are different than what you've played before because a lot of them just relate directly towards the 2 different tracks. And on top of that, instead of having a dial, there is a board that kind of shows the your life points. And instead of having the evolution card sets that you'll be able with the expansion for King of Tokyo, each monster will have a special ability, like one single special ability that they'll be able to do based upon the dice rolling. So I love King of Tokyo. I love King of New York. I have many of its expansions, and not all of them because I got off the boat before I became financially unwell. Because, like, at some point they realized people were collecting the monsters, and they were like, hey, now the monsters are like individually wrapped at $20, $30, $50, $100 each. And I was just like, no, I like this game because it's quick and easy and cheap, and I can play, and it's got the cardboard cutouts, and I don't want to spend $50 on a cardboard cutout, but they do that. So King of Tokyo has an incredible, insane number of expansions that are primarily just cardboard cutouts of the monsters. So King of Tokyo Duel, great job, because King of Tokyo, this is a little bit of a preamble for the expansion feature episode. They needed to stop making monsters at some point because it's just a cutout. It doesn't have all the extra cards with the evolutions and stuff that came along with it. So
Right, right, right.
that was also a bad thing that they did. So stop with that. You got this now. We're happy with that. You did the island thing, which was kind of a problem, but that's another review. So King of Tokyo Duel's coming out. And then next up, I'll say ever so briefly because I talked about Star Trek last week in my acquisition disorders, but this past week, Star Trek Captain's Chair uh, from WizKids was just kind of somewhat announced. It was also on the internet on a particular channel, and this is from Nigel Buckle and our friend David Turtsey. Turns out Turtsey is a huge Star Trek fan. So what he's doing is taking one of his other games that he's kind of played around with a little bit, and he's making it all about these different factions within the Star Trek universe. So if you like, I think it's Imperium, right, Anthony? I think it's the
Yeah, so I was looking this up before we started. He's taking some of the mechanics from
yes.
Imperium, but he said very clearly it is not Imperium.
It's a lot more. It's a lot more detailed.
Yeah,
And he, when he talked about, like you said on the internet, he talked about how it does. It's not a reskin.
right.
It really is. It's supposedly really is. It's its own game, but there are certain elements from it as well, and it takes from all the different generations of Star Trek. So if you are original classic, if you are next gen, if you're Deep Space Nine, Voyager, lower decks, there's some cards in there. I don't see necessarily anything specific as far as the faction's concerned, and then the new stuff. And these are they look kind of AI-ish, but what he talked about, what he believes it is they took screenshots and they just kind of painted the pictures from that. So, core board standees, a bunch of decks, and player sheets where you kind of manage three different resources on the board. So I'm excited, and it's on pre-order now. It's releasing in the fourth quarter of this year. So yeah, check it out. Pre-orders up for Star Trek Captain's Chair.
It's a weird mix of captains.
It's a lot of weird, yeah.
You got Picard, of course. You got to have Picard or Kirk, right? Those are like the two cores, and then just a
I didn't see Kirk.
Kirk's not there, right? It's
Yeah,
Picard and then Cisco, who's a great captain, but like that's number two. Okay, just in terms of like public consciousness,
yeah.
and then Michael Burnham. What?
They keep trying to make Michael Burnham a thing. Like,
No.
if you
And
love
then
it, that's good for you. I'm not taking that away from you, but I'm just like, we're missing some people in between.
yeah, and then like the antagonist side, they got really weird with it, like Koloth and what's the Romulan one, Sela. Like it's so weird.
Yeah, I think, like you said, they went based upon the shows, and I don't know if it's necessarily like people's most popular ones. And again, if the cards stay true, there's a mix of artwork,
Right.
which I'm going to say that's not going to work
No.
because like they have some of the really old artwork from the Star Trek cartoon, and then some like it's very different art pieces. It sadly kind of reminds me of Terraform Mars, where it's like some of them
Mm,
look like actual photos,
yeah.
and some of them look like paintings, and some of them look like weird drawings, and I don't, and some are just symbols. So I don't know why that's a thing, but it's a thing. And there's cardboard cutouts, which I'm not a fan of, but it's fine. Standees. They have a
Yeah.
standee. I don't like. All
Yeah.
right.
They have the miniatures. They make the
I
miniatures.
know
Just
they
put them in the box.
legit like WizKid makes the miniatures.
I
Like, what do you?
know.
Why are we doing standees here? Why is this not a Kickstarter thing? I am a little concerned that there is a lot of text and a lot of symbology on these cards.
Yeah. I mean that's Imperium. That's
Yeah, I'm not happy about that.
you
Just
know.
like it's a lot to kind of manage on a tableau.
These are the guys who designed Voidfall, so you're lucky that it's not like the box isn't the size of a car. So
Oof. Well, I'm still anticipating it. I don't know if we're good or bad, but I will certainly be happy to get my hands on this and play the heck out of it. So, yeah, that is Star Trek Captain's Chair. Star Trek's making a big comeback, man. It's their year.
yeah, yeah. What did they go away?
Well, considering Paramount is up for sale for the last couple of years, and
Uh,
every month somebody else is buying them, and they canceled Lower Decks, and they also canceled Discovery as well too. But I think less people care about that.
yeah, nobody cares about that.
No, everyone cares about Lower Decks, which is awesome. If you're not a Star Trek fan, but you do like sci-fi or you do like Futurama, you should give it a try because it's very
Yeah,
Futurama-y.
so good. Yeah,
Oh, so good. All right, so that's our games that we'd like to get to the table. Let's talk about the games that we did get to the table, and we'll let you know if those games are a buy and you should run out and pick those games up. If those games are a play and you should sit down and enjoy them. If those games are to be a dodge, just avoid them at all costs. And in fact, some games, hate to say it, are the dread burn, so stick them in an airlock and send them out. Anthony, which plays me?
all right. So I played a game that it was up on Kickstarter back in 2022, and I remember we might have even talked about it on here, and I was like double eh. I was not interested in it, because it didn't seem like the kind of game that would translate from video game into cardboard effectively. Most don't, because the reason you make a video game is because you have algorithms and tracking and RNG, all things that you can't really easily replicate in cardboard. And if you try, it gets messy. So, Slay the Spire, the board game, was a Kickstarter that I passed on initially, and people started to get their copies in April of this year. And all the initial reviews were glowing. People were like, "This is great. They pulled it off. It really works." And that caught my attention, combined with the fact that I really, really got into Slay the Spire, the video game, more than I even had before in the intermittent 18 months. So I'm like, oh, I love this game a lot. And people are saying that they actually pulled it off. And it feels exactly like the video game, but it's also giving like that cardboard feel. And so I bit the bullet and I did a late back on it. So I got this in about a week and a half ago, and I've been playing through it. And guess what? It's pretty darn good. Slay the Spire, the board game works. So I was wrong. So
Yay!
if you go back to that old go back to that old episode where I said this could not possibly work, just tell that guy he's a dummy. Like, he was wrong. Um, so if you've never played Slay the Spire the video game, it is a deck building game, like in the most traditional sense. There's been plenty of deck building video games, but this is the one that put the genre on the map, like on Steam. Uh, there's been a bunch since, but this is like the OG. And so what it is you play as one of these various heroes that is climbing this spire, right, and taking out the bosses on the way up. Plays over the course of 4 acts, and each time you finish an act, which is like this whole like area of the tower, and you kind of go up this like path of your own choosing. So you beat a boss, and then it'll branch off in 2 locations, and you can choose like I'm going to the left or going to the right, whatever. So there are monsters you'll fight. There's elite monsters. There are campfires. There's treasure chests. There's like events that happen as you move along this path, and all of this is represented by decks in the board game. So there is a deck of cards for the monsters. There's a deck of cards for the summons, which is a really cool way that they do this. Is when you go to a location with a monster, you're going to draw a monster card, right? You just draw one card and you put it in your row. But if that card has summons on it, so it has a little section at the bottom for summons, you will draw additional cards. Because if when you play the video game, sometimes you hit a monster and there are multiple monsters there to fight, not just one. So the game replicates that in an easy to do way. It's not like complex. It doesn't take a bunch of extra thinking. There's no overhead to it. It's just, hey, here's the monsters. Um, the other really smart thing it does is it scales everything down dramatically. In the video game, because it's a video game, you start the game with 80 health, and your monsters that you face have, sometimes dozens or hundreds of health. Um, and when you do attacks, it's based on all these different mechanisms, and there's all these different modifiers, and it's really not replicable as a board game. And one of the reasons I was worried about it is like you're going to have like 5,000 counters to keep track of, but it scales it down just enough to make it accessible and trackable and easy to work with in a way that is functional in a board game space. Like you have, depending on which of the heroes you have, because they are asymmetrical, you'll have around 10 health to start instead of 80. And the monsters will do anywhere between like 1 and 4 damage to you, like in Act One, for example. Um, and so that's much easier to keep track of, right? And the basic mechanics are the same. You have 3 energy at the start of each turn that you can use to spend cards from your hand, and you have 0 block, and you can build up your block, and you can build up your attack, and then you attack the monster, and then it does its things and attacks you back. All these monsters are familiar, right? It's using the same artwork from the game. It's using all the same kind of attack basic levels from the game, but it's adjusting them for the board game space. There's a die mechanic. You roll a die at the beginning of each combat round, and or each turn within the combat round, and the die will then apply to a bunch of different things. Like all of your, not all of your artifacts, but most of your artifacts will have a die number on them. They will activate based on the die you roll. I think I said artifact. I meant relic.
Mhm.
Got to get the words right because this game's been around for a while. Um, so you want to try to get relics lined up in such a way that some of them will activate on any die roll, right? If you play it solo, you start the game with a relic that basically, if you roll 4 or higher, is going to give you free block to start the round, which is kind of cool. Um, and that so it does everything really well. If you get to the market, you can buy all these different cards. There's like treasure chests or relic cards you can buy from your deck. Um, the upgrade mechanic on the cards is really seamless. The one downside, of course, is you have to sleeve everything, like everything. But
Ooh.
the game comes with the sleeves,
Oh, nice.
so that they are opaque backed sleeves. And when you upgrade a card, you just literally pull the card out of the sleeve, flip it over, and slide it back in. So there are 400 something cards in the game, and all of the player cards are double sided. So it's a lot of stuff. So you look at the price of this, and you're like, "That's a lot of money for a board game." And it's like it is, but there's a lot in the box. Um, the big thing here that's different about this board game, though, from like the video game is a single player experience, right? You get your hero, you run through the tower, You eventually die. It's a roguelike essentially, right? And it's decently difficult until you kind of learn the flow of the game and kind of build yourself in a way that you can kind of overcome the challenges. The board game, I would say, is a little bit easier up front. It gets harder as you get further along, but it's also cooperative. So you can play it solo for sure, or you can play with up to 4 players. And when you play with up to 4 players, everybody can kind of work together. Um, when the monsters come out, they're going to go to the rows of the individual players based on whose turn it is, right? But the elite monsters and the bosses attack everybody, and everybody can attack them, and everybody can help each other out, can heal each other. You can pass some things back and forth. Not everything transfers, but it's all fairly seamless. And what this does is allows you to build up these pretty cool combos between these different characters, managing their own different unique asymmetrical decks. And I haven't played with 4 people yet, and it seems like based on Board Game Geek, a lot of people are like 4 is a bit much, but I would love to see just like these big combos kind of pull off. Now, because you are drawing from a deck, it's got that RNG element to it, and you are rolling a die. It could also be a mess and you fail because of that. Um, so even with my solo games, I'm considering just switching over to playing multi-handed with 2 because I want to have that kind of synergy there because the game is designed around it. Um, so it doesn't. It somehow manages to feel like the video game, and at the same time, not at all feel like the video game. It replicates the feeling of playing the game without replicating all of the elements thereof, which I think is a really clever way to do it. And it's just a really fantastic implementation. It's expensive. I'm not going to argue with that. It is a lot of money. It's also very long. Like you could do a full run of Slay the Spire on Steam in like 45 minutes. If you do a full run of it at the table, it's going to take 2 to 3 hours because each act takes about 45 minutes to an hour. But if I want to play a board game, often I want it to take a long time and I want it to sit back and kind of relax and not have it be like, kind of more engaging. Um, and if I do want to play the video game, it's there and I can play it on my Switch or on my PC or on my phone, probably at this point. Um, so Slay the Spire, the board game, it's definitely a buy. I'm super happy I went out and picked it up despite my early um, misgivings about it. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to keep playing it. It's like it's not going to go right back on the shelf like a lot of the games. Like I've reviewed it, I'm going to put it away, and I'll find something else. Like I'll probably play this up until I leave, and
Oh,
then I'll put
wow.
it away, and then who knows if I'll play anything other. I'm not taking it with me on the trip; it's too big.
Oh, okay.
But but I will definitely play it through over the next week or so.
Well, it's high praise because the game is very good, and you already have the game. So, again, the inevitable question, Anthony: somebody out there does not have the board game, does not have the video game. What do you do?
Uh, I would say the board game's very expensive, so it's a tough sell to start there. Um, I would say start with the video game, right? You could find a copy, like you could get a copy relatively inexpensive, like it's frequently on sale. And I don't even know like the retail cost typically, probably 20-30 dollars. Um, but it's 25 bucks. Yeah, so I just pulled it up. It's $25. So I would say start there, especially if you like deck building games, because it's a fantastic video game. It's one of the best deck building games on digital deck building games. I think it was our number one actually when we did our list.
Mhm.
Um, the board game, however, it's almost a companion to that. Like it is a unique. It feels different. It's tangible. It's in front of you. You can feel it. You're working through it. It's not. You're not rushing through things. It's like the reverse. Like you ever play a board game and then you get the digital version, and the digital version kind of ruins it for you
Yes.
because you're like all of a sudden you can play Terra Mystica in 12 minutes,
Yes.
or whatever. You're like,
Ticket
I
to
don't want to play
Ride.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it removes the sheen, right? It takes away all the kind of it shows you the workings behind it. This is like the opposite of that. It's putting a layer over it and making it a little more opaque, but not in a bad way.
Mhm.
Um, so and a little more gameable, right? Because you can see what's coming. It's programmed in a certain way. You know what the enemies are going to do to you because it's written on the cards. And even though they have multiple attacks that they could do, you can see the order in which they're going to do them. Um, it's very board gamey in that way. So yeah, I would say start with the video game if you've never played anything. It's much more accessible cost wise and learning wise. Um, but otherwise, yeah, it's fantastic, and it's I think coming to retail sometime this summer, so it will be available everywhere at some point.
It's great to see. Again, we talked about this in relation to that episode where we talked about deck builders that were online. But again, video games that are board games that are board games that are video games, because
Yeah,
originally that video game was kind of a board game and then became a video game, and now it's back to our board game. So it'll be interesting to see how it exists in the board game environment. Like, does it substantiate, like, does it have a substantial place in our industry, or is it just a novelty, like you said, a companion
mm,
piece to the video game where maybe some video gamers kind of like champion it and are playing it. I don't know if this eventually stands alone. Like, again, we talked about Riot Games not too long ago where they had their own Gears kind of game, which is kind of a companion. It never like it's a great game, but it never became like its own thing. Like, they never went further than that. So
yeah. It's tough, right? Like it's $100. It's
it's a
$100, and
lot.
so like
Yeah.
your casual video gamer who's like, oh, they made a board game out of Slay the Spire, like $100. I I
And
imagine a lot of people will balk at that, and I don't blame them at all.
yeah, it'd be interesting, like, if in an alternate universe the board game came out first, and then they were like, "Oh, you can play this online now? You don't have to set it up and go crazy and spend $100. You can play on a digital version of this, and
Yeah.
the digital version's good." So,
This if it was that way, it would be the best board game app ever made because it
yes.
is that good of a video game. So,
Wow.
um, there's a sequel coming too soon. I think they're making Slay the Spire too.
They need to. It's been way too long since they did something new with it, but now I know why. They were busy doing the board game.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Well, I got a chance to play 2 games this week. 2 that are kind of somewhat related to each other because randomness is random. First up is Star Tycoon. Came out this year. It was a Kickstarter and had a good run. It was pretty much, I think they had one game before this, but this was kind of like their major release. Star Tycoon is a game about having an interstellar company and utilizing a market to purchase planets, utilize developments, and as every good Euro game does, score points, because that's typically what you're doing throughout the game. So I got to play, thanks to someone at the game table this week, their deluxe version. Very nice production. Uh, Playmat that was out there, card quality was decent. The tokens were excellent. They seem like way overdone, but you are utilizing the tokens a lot. There's a lot of trading back and forth with the tokens, so the high quality tokens was necessary here. The game itself really comes down to a pretty simple action formula. You start the round by playing an event, and that event will be typically a good thing but could be a bad thing, and typically it's going to give you something, utilize your resources in a certain way, engage with the market in a particular way, and then you're going to produce. Now production happens as far as what you have on your planets, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then on your turn you're going to take 3 actions, and there's a lot of different actions to take in the game, but primarily what's going to come down to is utilizing your Star Tycoon abilities, and in particular, your special ability, which you will choose at the beginning of the game, which is your private corporation, which gives you a special ability. It's not major, it's just a thing that your corporation does. Think Star Trek again, because for some reason people like Star Trek, me included. So a lot of the corporations and some of the puns in the game are very Star Trek related, but also have some other elements to it as well. So the primary action you're going to be taking throughout the game is purchasing. And you are going to purchase from a market, and typically, again, depending on the event, 3 cards from each line are going to come out. So the first line is planets. Planets are necessary because planets hold developments. The planet will tell you how many developments it can hold, and every planet has an additional scoring ability if the developments you placed underneath it match whatever the special condition is. So you could get 2 to 4 points. based on getting the correct developments. Then the next three rows below it are just developments. There are simple developments, one, level two, and then level three is where you're going to score your major points in the game. How do you purchase all these things? Well, you'll start with some resources based upon your initial kind of planet, and then there is a galactic exchange. It's basically a market that when you purchase things, price goes up. When you sell things, the price goes down. So there's a lot of that kind of market action and then figuring out when to sell, when to buy kind of thing. There's also loans in the game. You can take a loan for 5 money that just kind of gets you started off. Not hugely essential in the game as you would think, but it does play somewhat of a role. And then finally, there's partnerships. Partnerships are all about scoring points based upon having development of a particular type. You spend, I think it's 5 science, and then you get development that's just yours for just scoring points. So again, as the game goes on, you're purchasing planets, purchasing developments, purchasing partnerships, you're utilizing, engaging, trading with the market, and then there's a couple of the game has some variant special kind of rules where you could trade with other players. We did that in our first game, and I highly do not recommend it because it ruins the galactic exchange, the market where you have to really think about buying and selling. Other games we play without it, it's much better. So again, you're going to do this, multiple times. You have multiple turns, 3 turns as far as a round is concerned, and then that you have 4 rounds in the game. And then at the end of the game, you score up the points. You get 30 between like 25 and 50 points in the game. That's primarily it. It's a fine game. I think it's fine. I think the idea of purchasing planets and development is good. I feel like they kind of fell off as far as like the thematic appeal to it. So the artwork is very nice. It's all kind of drawn artwork, but there's nothing engaging. It's very symbolically heavy. Like you're just looking at the symbols. Do I have the right matching symbols here? It's nice to have artwork, but there's nothing unique about the planets other than the scoring. There's nothing unique about the development other than, again, scoring. They don't give you special abilities or anything like that as far as that's concerned. Partnerships are points. Everything's points. Everything's points, and then there's one market. Not bad, but it really needed something more. Dare I say an expansion? So,
No! What are you doing?
all right, all right.
It's the opposite of what we're doing today.
So you buy planets, you buy developments, you trade some things on the market, and then you take your next term. And again, you'll get resources each round based upon the developments that are attached to your planets. But as the game's going on, the planets require certain developments to score points, but the market, you really can't really do anything with the market until it comes around to you because it's going to change radically because everyone's going to like sell a number of goods, so it changes the market. And then the planets and the developments that are available, one of the actions you could take is to wipe a complete row. So what you thought's there is now gone because someone decided to wipe it to get some new stuff out there, or they just purchase what you want, and by the time it comes back around to you, it's not available. So maybe you play at the 2 player situation, or maybe you play solo to score points with the Automa. I didn't play solo, so I can't speak to it. Didn't play 2 player, played 3 player, played 4 player a couple times. It's quick playing, it's fast, but there's nothing really to it other than points. There's nothing, it's just, did you get lucky enough for the card that you want to be available on the market? And do you have the random, supplies? Like sometimes I'm like, well, what am I collecting here to purchase? I don't know because by the time it gets around to me, those cards will be gone, probably, maybe, possibly. So I will just collect resources. Do I care about the planets matching? I do, but nothing's coming out and I'm running out of time, so I don't care. So I was scoring points from a lot of different things, but nothing that I planned. Everything was kind of random. So for Star Tycoon, I'm going to give it a dodge. It's
Ah,
it's fine. It's fine. I mean, it's fine. There are better games. Star Tycoon. I don't
just
know.
gotta get that expansion in there, I guess. Freaking expansions.
All right, so let me talk about a game that is somewhat similar, but a little bit different. So this is the Vale of Eternity. This came out in 2023, and this is another game of somewhat tactical randomness. Basically, what you're going to have is you're going to have two bidding markers. So at the start of the round, cards are going to be placed out based upon the number of players, which allows everyone to be able to collect two cards. When it's your turn, you'll place your bidding marker to hold that card just for you. And then it goes around to everybody else. And if you are the last player, you'll get to place both of your tokens out. And then, so you've selected your cards. Now, here's the twist: you can have cards in your hand to play, you can have cards in your tableau that sometimes do an action or have done an action. But the cards that are on display that you have held, you can choose to sell them based upon where they are on the board. So it has this weird star shape to it, and each of the different colors slash factions here have a different value. So the dragon cards are very valuable. So if you sell one of those cards, it's worth a gem or a 6 coin. Now, why that's important to say is because obviously that's a great coin. You got a 6. There's ones, threes, and 6. 6 is a lot. And even more so, it's even more important because you can only hold 4 currency, 4 different tokens that have different numbers, right? So you can hold ones, you can hold threes or sixes. You can only hold 4. That's it. You can't hold more than that. Now, there are cards that break that rule and allow you to get these different stone monies, kind of move it up to 6. But basically, you're going to have 4 tokens. You don't get change back. So if you have that 6, awesome. But if the card costs 3, you probably were better off having the 3 token there. So you choose to sell the card and get the money, or you get to take the card into your hand, no cost, or you get to choose to play the card from your hand, then it has a cost. That's where those tokens come in. So you can make money from just selling cards, and you typically will do that at the start of the game, and or throughout the game, cards have special abilities on them. Some of the special abilities will give you money, will give you an opportunity for your money to become more valuable, will work with other cards to score additional points, will give you special abilities to knock out other cards from other players' tableaus, will give you an opportunity to play a card, pop it back into your hand, play it again, pop it back into your hand, or play a card from the market, and then it goes back into the deck. So there's a lot of different varieties of actions here. Most are end round related, but there's so many different varieties of this. Again, and their factions typically work together. So if you get a lot of the water cards, they'll work together. A lot of the dragon cards, they're okay. They kind of work together. They're basically your big point scoring cards. So when you play this game, when you play the Veil of Eternity, you're like, this is kind of random based upon what comes out. And do these work together? And you know what? It kind of works. Surprisingly, it kind of works. Where Star Realms really didn't, because the stuff that was coming out was just points. At least the random stuff that was coming out here tied together really well with other cards and gave you additional abilities that you could play throughout the game. This kind of reminded me, Anthony, of Fantasy Realm from
Hmm.
WizKids, where you have those like every card has powers and every card's great, and you have to play something, you have to give something away.
Hmm.
That's what this is, but a little more as far as a board game is concerned.
Right. That's cool. I like that idea. Like that fantasy realms mechanic is great.
Yes.
So
So this is good.
that's at scale. That's cool.
Yeah, because when you're looking at the to place the tokens, you're like, everything is good. I love that feeling. You don't want to have like, oh, and there's bad cards out here,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're going to get stuck. You're going to get stuck choosing some cards, and if you don't want them because it doesn't work with your tableau or work with the cards in your hand, you're going to sell it all for money anyway, which is
Right.
also fine. So the artwork is beautiful, very fantasy based. The Veil of Eternity, it gets a very, I would say, it gets a very high play for me. Like it a lot.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
All right, so those are the games that we hit the table this week. Now, on to our feature review. So our feature review this week allows us to do the complete opposite of what we were just been doing and talk about expansions in a little bit of a negative way. Just please, no more expansions, Anthony.
Yeah, yeah, and let's just preface this by saying a lot of these games have very good expansions, but at a certain point, enough's enough.
They need to stop. We didn't
They
say
need
they're
to stop.
bad, just need to stop.
They need to stop. Stop doing it. So we have 10 games here that need to stop. And then an honorable mention beyond that that also needs to stop. But we'll talk through them. Let's kick it off with the big one, the one that you've been stuck on for years.
Oh no, no.
I don't own a single expansion for this game, and so this is all you, man. Smash Up.
I'm feeling some trauma. I don't know how to talk about this because, like King of Tokyo, there are certain games that absolutely 100% trigger my acquisition disorder. And I remember when Smash Up was first coming out, and I they were basically showing the cards, and there wasn't a lot of information about it, but it had all of these different kinds of, I wouldn't say IPs. I mean, some cases, especially later down the road, they are legally distinct IPs. But all of these different factions, you had pirates, you had aliens, you had ghosts, you had plants, you had monsters and zombies, and I was like, that's fantastic. I love literally the smashing up of all these different characters. So Smash Up was and is to this day, you take two decks, two very different types of factions, you shuffle them together, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, these factions complement each other as you play the cards to be able to take over some of these particular bases. And you try to match whatever the point value is to break that particular location. So when this first came out, the base game had a good number of, how would you say it, like a good number of like legally distinct IPs, and I was like, cool, this is enough. And then they started all of the other expansions that came out. Now, with Smash Up, it wasn't like one expansion at a time. It was small expansions that basically had four or more kind of expansions in a box. And they IP'd legally distinct everything. So you had Knights of the Round Table, you had all of the 80s kind of people, you had every animal as far as penguins and dinosaurs and bears and stuff like that. And it was fun and I enjoyed it. And then I was like, "Oh, my base box with all the expansions is coming pretty tight." And they're like, "Hey, let's do a bigger geekier box." And I'm like, "This seems very big. I don't think there's going to be enough expansions." And they were like, "Haha, we have plans for you." So then they came out with the big square box, like this huge square box. That there's Munchkin in it, there's Sheep in it, there's All Stars in it, there's Transformer legally distinct, there's Game of Thrones. Like there is just so many expansions at this point that the infinite amount of combinations just breaks your brain. Like there's no way you'll be able to play with all these different expansions at the table. And at some point, again, I think what you need and the reason why the expansions become a problem is because certainly you can smash these all up together and play different two factions combos, but there's so many out there right now. If you sat down and played this and threw any two together, if you're okay with losing, that's fine. But there are certainly factions that go better together, but there are so many factions at this point that I think, again, just like we talked about Nucleum, they need to give it a rest so that everyone can catch up and figure out what works and what doesn't work, and stop releasing giant boxes because it's one of the heaviest games that I own now because I own a good crazy number of factions here. So Smash Up, please stop doing the expansions.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or keep doing it because I find it amusing. It's fun.
No, that's the opposite of what I just said.
Oh man. I mean they're gonna do it anyway, so might as well have fun with it.
It's a lot. It's
Yeah,
really it
that is a lot. It's so many.
have you have none of those. You avoid this.
Yeah. I do.
You played it though.
I played Smash Up. It's fine. It's just not a game I would collect.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those things where it's not. Again, it's great to have all the different kind of things there, but it doesn't radically play differently. So, all right, Anthony,
All right.
what's up next?
All right. Next up is a game that both of us have. This is one that I have picked up every expansion for, and you know what? The designers helped me out here because the next expansion I just categorically do not want, and that's Clinic.
Hmm.
So this is from Albin Viard, and Albin Viard, great designer, but has a history of being like, "This is it, I'm done," and then 3 months later being like, "Just kidding, there's more." He did it with Tramways for years. He kept saying he was done, and then having a new map. There's still new stuff coming out for Tramways. Please be done. There's no room for them anymore. Um, Clinic now is in the same boat. I have an entire Kalax block just for Clinic expansions. I think they're up to 5 or 6 of separate expansions, and it's like 100 and something odd modules for the game. Um, a long game, by the way, like a 3+ hour game. You're never going to get through all those modules. It's time to be done. Uh, the new expansion, which he just announced and he's working on now, is like the 69th expansion, which it's tongue in cheek. It's a little blue humor. I'm not really interested in any of that. So I'm like, okay, cool. I can be done because I don't want that. And once I don't have one, it's easy for me to just be kind of out on things.
Hmm.
But up till then, I was getting all of them. There's the 5 that they launched, plus the COVID one, and some other small stuff in between. And it's too much because there's no way ever play all of it. Like a heavy Euro game does not need 100 plus modules. It just doesn't.
That's crazy. Well, let me jump back because you just mentioned 100. I wanted to go find someone who did the math with Smash Up. So, counting the 10th anniversary set, how many factions do you think there are, Anthony?
I don't know. If I had to guess a number, I'd be like 125,
95.
95. Okay,
95 with 20 cards per faction, 193 bases, 30 madness cards, 20 treasure cards, 20 monster cards, giving you a total of 2,165 cards.
that's nuts.
Yeah, sorry.
And look, what's the combo number on that too? Like several
I
thousand, right?
that's what I'm saying. Stop. I can't combo anymore.
Too many, too many. So yeah, Smash Up too many, Clinic also too many, and you know what? He keeps saying he's done. He's not done. He's never going to be done. He's a clever man with lots of good ideas. Just make a new game though. Make a different game.
It's I don't know why he did that. Did something happen to him? Because like
I don't know.
is he legally I mean
I don't,
it's painful.
it's funny too because like Clinic and Tramways, the 2 games that keeps doing this with. I love these games. They're in my top 100. They're fantastic games.
Sure.
I will never play any other new content that comes out for them because I already have so much content for both of them.
I have way too much this like I thought it was like, oh okay, another expansion. Okay, it's nice. I probably won't play it. It'd be nice to have in case I do at some point. And now at this point, it's just it's scary. It really is scary. It's just please stop. I want to finish the collection now, sir.
Yeah, yeah. No more. I just want to be done. Thank you.
It's true.
All right. Next up, we have Seven Wonders,
Sure.
which is it's been around for a long time, and so I would say relative to the speed at which the expansions come out, a little bit slower than the first two.
Sure. Yeah, the first
But
two will blow your brains out.
yeah, Smash Up is nuts. That game's been out for less than 10 years. 95 expansions is
No,
crazy.
no.
Like,
I don't have all 95 people. Let me just say that right now.
yeah,
I don't have anywhere near that. A lot,
yeah,
but nowhere near that.
that's so many. Um, but Seven Wonders has a bunch, right? Like they don't all fit in the base box anymore.
No.
You don't really play with all of them together because it becomes a whole giant mess. And now we have like multiple editions of each of those expansions on top of everything.
Yes. Seven Wonders is one of my favorite games of all time. It's always in my top 100, typically around try to remember one last time, top 10 or top 20. I love it. It's always been my favorite Civ game. I mean, I love other Civ games too for different reasons, but I love a good tableau builder. And Seven Wonders is good. It needed expansions. It came out with probably it's the two best expansions it ever had, which is Leaders, which allowed you to have some asymmetric power at the beginning or more money, and then Cities, which provided more player interaction, which was great. And then some artwork stuff is fine, but then they went Babel. They went with this giant board that you all had to kind of contribute to, and the great works that go along with it. And it was like, this doesn't really work. It's a separate thing that you have to kind of play towards, and you're missing the seamless the streamlinedness of Seven Wonders, which is creating this wonderful tableau. And then they were like, Armada, now you have ships. And I'm just like, but what? No, no, nobody asked for this. I mean, I picked it up, but I didn't ask for this at all. And then they came out with anniversary packs, which are fine because, again, it was leaders and cities that came out again. And then there was an infinite number of promos that came out at some point. And then they rebooted it and they brought out Seven Wonders with a new version of quasi Babel, quasi Great Works as far as Edifice is concerned. And then, a lot of little small things that came along with that as well. Seven Wonders is a great game. Seven Wonders with leaders and or cities makes it an outstanding game. They should have stopped. They're not stopping. Please, dear God, stop. Like, it just doesn't make the game better. It doesn't fit in the box, clearly. It's just, you got Seven Wonders Duel. You did something different. Awesome. Just Seven Wonders Architect, not so much. But it's good. It's good. It's good. It's just stop. Stop. Just stop.
Yeah, no mas.
No us.
All right. Next up, Terraforming Mars. This game has 5 expansions, and we've talked about this at length over the years. 2 of them are good. The rest of them are unnecessary, and therefore no more because that's a failure rate of 60%. So, you could get new maps, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with new maps for the game. That was the first expansion. The Prelude expansion is the only expansion you really absolutely need for this game. It should come in the box.
Sure.
Everything else beyond that is it's kind of just like, sure, that exists. Like, Venus makes the game longer, thins out the deck. The mining, it's interesting and fun to send the ships out and get additional resources, but again, it adds an extra action. It slows down the game. Turmoil, we talked about, severely slows down the game, doesn't really add anything, and puts in global events that are negative for everybody, which is not fun. Uh, most of these expansions are not very interesting. So, or if they are interesting, they're not very fun. Prelude is an absolute must, but this is like one of those. It's almost like a gimme at this point. Prelude expansion for any kind of game. Make the game asymmetrical and start faster. Great, awesome. But everything else, not so much. So we're done with Terraforming Mars expansions. Please stop doing it. I know they did Prelude too, but we were done with that too.
Yes.
So no more. We're
I
done.
only acknowledge Prelude. I don't acknowledge any of their expansions. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I
yeah.
just
I've pulled everything else out of my decks over the years. They're in the box still because where else do I put that stuff? But it's not in the decks.
I remember, was it where you had to pull out the floaters because
Yeah,
I guess at some level they recognized that like the deck is just too big, and if you have a card or a faction that needs certain cards, you'll never see it. They
yeah,
just never took the time to regulate the deck. So everything goes in the deck, and you have this deck that just is endless. And if you want to terraform the planet properly, you may not be able to because of all the corporations and the cards in there. And then anything that adds to the length of the game is just is a no go for me. I don't care how cute or interesting it might be. The game is long. And if you have some players at the table that just don't terraform the planet and just play with the cards on the table, you're going to have a bad time. I mean,
yeah,
Prelude's good because Prelude's basically what Seven Wonders Leaders does, which is like, here's an opportunity to choose or empower your particular faction board. So that works well. I don't necessarily need Prelude 2. Everything else is fine. I own a lot of this stuff, and I'm sorry I did because it's just Prelude, which is the smallest expansion there is for Terraforming Mars.
yeah. Right. It's just a few cards.
It's a few cards. Everything else is like, hey, you get these ships and you get these citizens and you get a deck of a this and a thing. No, no. You get an extra
Yeah.
board. You do the thing, you do the floaters on the board. No, nope.
Nope. No, thank you.
Nope. I'm out.
Literally every single one of these expansions makes the game longer. Don't make the game longer. Make it
No.
more streamlined. All
Oh,
right.
and not to mention all the plastic pieces too, but we won't mention that.
Right. All right. Next up, we have Concordia.
Yes.
Almost through Power Grid on here. It's basically the same thing. It's
Yes.
just maps upon maps upon maps. Concordia has two full big box expansions as well with Salsa and Venus. Venus is a standalone. You don't have to play with the full game. Um, but it also has how many map sets they have? Like eight, nine.
Yeah.
It's a lot,
It
and
is.
it's not to say it. We don't need them. I'm sure everybody has their favorites, but at a certain point, you're not going to play all of them.
No.
Like even if you played Concordia constantly, like every week, how many maps do you really need? They just keep coming out. I stopped buying them at a certain point, and I don't actually know what's come out since then because I ran out of space in the box, and I wasn't going to keep doing that. Power Grid, I have three separate boxes. I have like the two collectors boxes and the base box, just full of maps. And I'm like, why do I have all these? It's too many maps, and that's like half the maps. Um, it's for the people who play the game obsessively, I'm sure, but it's just too much. It's too much to keep track of.
It's a lot, again with Salsa and Venus, I I would like the designers to come out and just be like, "Hey, this just plays best, and this is Matt Gertz, and it's probably his I think it's definitely his most popular game out there. It's my favorite game of his, and I love a lot of his games out there. But I feel like there's just a best map for this game, or one or two, but not this level. And I worry about that too because I think a lot of games when they have different maps in the designer's head, they're like, here's another way to play it. Awesome. But a lot of these different maps just don't play as well or don't play as well with some of the expansion stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So just stop doing it. Um, all right, so we got a one-two punch here of a couple Marvel games. First up, Marvel United,
Oh no.
which like we could have just made this a list of Kickstarter games. We didn't. There's a
Oh
few,
geez,
but
there's a
we
lot.
didn't. Um, but Simon really, outdid themselves with Marvel United in the sense that you have the base set, which ends up being like a $20 box you can get at Walmart, and then 10, 11, 12, 15 expansions, whatever it is, that go along with it. I have an entire row of shelves just with all of the first two sets of releases on this, and then a new batch of them coming with Multiverse. Um, it's more figures than I will ever get through. There are hundreds of them at this point, uh, and they keep releasing them. And now we got DC coming, and it's a good game, and it's all very interesting, and many of them are unique and different. But the game is not complex enough to need to have 300 different ways to play it, and that's what we have right now. So I'm done. Stop it. No more. I know people are calling for Marvel United season 4. I'm like, what would it even be? That's too much.
Background characters. That's pretty much
Right.
it. Yeah, it's a lot, and I think it thins out the quality of the gameplay because at some point you just run out of things to do with the characters. So it's fine if you have like King of Tokyo, you have a standee. You're like, it does nothing but shows a thing. But when it actually plays into the gameplay, I think that's where it becomes somewhat broken.
Right. All right. And then the other half of the formula, Marvel Legendary, which over the when did this game launch? 2012. It's been around for a long time, 10 plus years. And in that time, they have released over 100 expansions, probably including various, promos or whatever, but just dozens and dozens of different decks and combinations and ways to play the game. Many of them out of print, by the way. It's just so much content for this, understandably almost lifestyle approach to a game for those who play it, but it's just a lot.
Oh, of course. It's a tremendous amount. And again, we watched this for years, people sleeve this game. And they're sleeving their lives away. It's just
Yeah,
and that was also another game too, Legendary, where we reviewed like 10 years ago, where a lot of times based upon the setup with the bad guys and all the henchmen and stuff like that, you could automatically win or lose the game a lot of times.
right.
Or it's just like you can't win and you have to play it out. So I think there's a problem there where it's just like infinite expansions, like yes, but also bad game time. Like you have a bad time playing that game because this faction with this faction causes this kind of problem.
Right.
So I really wish they would go through their stuff and just like account for those things, just like with Smash Up.
Yeah. Right. It's just too much to kind of even keep track of in your head. Um, Next one's all you, man. Munchkin.
Legally, I have to say all the things about Munchkin.
Yeah.
Uh, I like Munchkin. I've always liked Munchkin. It's a game that my family plays. I love John Kovalec's artwork to an unacceptable limit, and I have collected many of the different base boxes of the different, unique IPs that go along with it. Some are IPs, some are uniquely legally distinct. But then Munchkin has a thing where, with a lot of its expansions, and especially with its base game, which is just classic D&D stuff, endless numbers of expansions, and I mean more expansions than anything else. And it's a moneymaker for them somewhat. But I think at this point, 2024, I think they've legitimately run out of ideas. So coming out in June is Munchkin. The floor is larva. So bugs. Then is Munchkin Pony Express. So ponies. Then there's Munchkin Snakes. Munchkin Rats. And I'm just like, it's happened, right? They've run out of things. Like, nope. But there's also Munchkin Cows, Munchkin Squids, and there's a lot more. And it's just, I stopped collecting the stuff. I think there's certain expansions that certainly do work well with the Munchkin stuff. It does add a certain flavor. So maybe you want Christmas, maybe you want fairies, maybe you want different classes and races as far as the D&D stuff tends to go. But I think at this point they are shooting themselves in the foot by oversaturating to the nth degree. Recently, they had their big uh, crowdfunding, and it was like a base box with really some cool artwork and some kind of cool stuff inside. And then they had just like the base box and a couple of expansions that did not sell. They do that a lot. They do a lot of like, hey, this is an expansion, uh, big box kind of thing. You get a bunch of expansions, which are not good. They're just not. That's why they didn't sell. So I really would like them to stop because I think they're hurting their own game. I understand money. Money is money. So I understand that. But there are over 187 expansions to Munchkin. Expansions.
That's
Not
crazy.
it just, and again, that does not count all of the other paraphernalia that you could pick up at Munchkin. And if you never play Munchkin, uh bookmarks are an expansion promo thing where they throw some special things, or dices and boxes and coloring books, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So I would like them to land the plane and decide on what the game is, because we've been reviewing this and talking about this for a very long time. There's a game in here, but it's just cluttered with other stuff, and I just wish they would take the opportunity to suss out where the game is in that and just make it a thing.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. The watch agrees.
From my
Uh,
words to the angel gets its wings.
yeah. um, all right. I mean, I'm with you, man. I don't. That's tough. I'm not so far into any game that I guess I shouldn't say that. Like I invest in the LCGs. I have dozens of expansions for various LCGs.
Hmm.
Um, they're not on this list because I don't know why they're not on this list, but
Yeah, man. Yeah, I talk about my stuff. What about you, man? That's not cool.
yeah.
We were
Well,
supposed to talk about stuff.
yeah, cool. Because like the LCG is like it's like a good TV show. There's like, oh, there's a new episode this week. That's great. Whereas Munchkin is just like it's the same game, but just different artwork.
It hurt. I mean, again, look, for the uninitiated or for people who mean very well, I mean, I think for the vast majority of these things that we want them to stop doing expansions is because it hurts the game.
Yeah.
Like Terraforming Mars, like a lot of those expansions hurt the game.
Right.
Like in of themselves, in their own little side world, it's fine. But once you throw it in there, it just hurts the game.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Um, all right. So I mentioned we have 10. I'm gonna knock off two more real quick, and then we'll get to our last thing. Nemesis.
uh-huh.
I only say that because if you wanted to get the game with all the expansions on GameFound when they re-released it, it was like $900.
Hmm.
So obviously that's too many expansions. I haven't played it, so this is completely based on that. But $900, guys, that's a lot of money for a board game. Just saying.
Yeah, we're not. Unfortunately, we're not that podcast, man.
No, we're not that podcast. And then Zombicide, we already hit on Simon, but we're gonna do it again because Zombicide has like 15 versions, I think, and then each of those versions, many of them have expansions, and some of them have many expansions. So, I remember going to our uh, Extra Life event back in Staten Island in 2013, and one of our friends there set up Zombicide with all the expansions, took up multiple tables. That was 11 years ago,
Wow,
right? All those expansions then, that was like season 2, and now fast forward and we have, you know, thousands more pieces for that game.
crazy.
Too much. I have some of it, but I can't imagine having all of it. Like that would be all you have. That'd be a whole Kalex. Uh and then last but not least, our honorable mention, not any one game, but Queen Games as a company has a habit of releasing their little Queenie expansions.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of games get maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of these, right? Some of them get dozens.
Yeah.
I have the Alhambra big box,
Mm-hmm.
and in it, it has something like 24, 30 something odd expansions, plus whatever amount they added with the Kickstarter. When I open that box, I can't even find the components to play the game. It's just so much stuff just in there, in all the trays and stuff. Um, there are other games that have similar approaches, maybe not that many Queenies, but it's often the case they're like, we had one cool idea, let's make the expansion. It's a promo, it's an expansion, just do it.
Yeah.
And it gets a little carried away.
And I remember, I'm trying to remember which one it was. It might have been Fresco, where they actually tell you how much more time each of these little Queenies adds to the game,
Oh, that's cool.
which I appreciate. But there's so many of them, as we talked about, infinite combinations, which ended up making the game worse.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah. Like it's at a certain point you get too many and yeah, how do you mesh them together? You can't. There's no way to do it. And
And
there's no way
again,
they were all play tested together. Because
no.
there's hundreds of combinations. It's too much.
And just like game length and complexity and what it adds and what it takes away, and how you again we talked about earlier, question of the week about games that you can get to the table. So with those kind of situations, you just don't know how they interact or interrupt certain things. Like, okay, we do this, but then we have to stop and do this, and then we have to go this. Like cognitive load overload.
Right.
All right, everyone. So there you go. No more expansions for these games. We have said it, let it be. Until next time, this is Chris.
And this is Anthony.
And we'll save you all. We'll see you at the table. Take care, everyone.
Bye.